Hi friends, you're most likely completely wrong about protein. But it's not your fault. Social media and the food industry tricked you, and you're not alone. How'd you feel the last time you ate? Did you need that caffeine to pick you up because you were feeling heavy, foggy, tired? That's not just in your head. It's your body reacting to the wrong protein. You don't think it's permanent until you notice weight gain, some wrinkles, maybe prediabetes, even full-blown metabolic issues with sky-high blood sugars and fat. But it doesn't have to stay this way. There are 10 protein-rich foods that can help you lose weight, build collagen, and activate longevity enzymes. So number 1 is wheat germ, which is a great way to upgrade any meal with protein because it contains a longevity protein called spermidine. Now, spermidine, it helps maintain cell membranes and promotes autophagy, improves metabolism, protects nerves and your mitochondria, and is thought to protect cells against cancer. It's known as the longevity vitamin, as animals fed spermidine can live 25% longer and healthier than those who aren't. Spermidine binds to your DNA directly to stabilize your genes. Now, your body and your gut microbiome can actually make spermidine, but levels decline as you age, and hence it's important to get it from your food sources like wheat germ or whole grains. Now, how do we know it works? How about improving cognition in people with mild dementia? Pretty good considering that it costs pennies to eat wheat germ, unlike the multi-billion-dollar failed investments in dementia therapeutics invested by Big Pharma. So why doesn't Big Pharma just patent spermidine? Well, you can't patent nature's pharmacy. Okay, some of you may wonder, what the heck is wheat germ? If you eat whole wheat, I had mentioned, you're already eating some wheat germ. But if you're eating refined white flour products like white bread, white bagels, tortillas, crackers, pizza, and noodles, you aren't eating any wheat germ. The companies actually are cheating you out of a longevity vitamin. So when you look at a whole wheat kernel, a tiny little part is called wheat germ that is concentrated with protein and spermidine. In fact, the highest concentration of spermidine is found in that wheat germ at the level of 243 milligrams per kilogram. So how do you actually eat this stuff? You basically sprinkle it on your food. If you like baked goods, you can sprinkle it in your dough. I put it in my soup, my salads, and you can add it to your sandwiches. The thing about wheat germ is that it's also a good source of zinc, magnesium, and fiber. And this translates into being fuller for longer, eating less, and overall, it helps you lose weight. Now, to me, it doesn't really have a taste. I substitute this for starch, which are highly caloric carbohydrates with no protein. And people love starch because of its texture, and it makes things thicker. It also makes food look shiny and tasty and crispier, but really has no added value in our modern world of calorie surplus, at least no nutritional value. We should actually be discarding starch, but we're not. We're instead discarding wheat germ, which is purposely removed from the flour, but added to foods used to feed farm animals. Do you find it strange that this is used to feed livestock? It's actually very nutritious. It's a longevity food. So why isn't people eating it? But yet we're giving it to our livestock that doesn't live long. Now here's a study that reversed colon cancer cells that was done by the lectins in wheat germ. Yes, wheat germ has lectins. You actually may be surprised to find out some lectins are good for you, unlike what you've been hearing on social media. And I'll get to this a little later. Now, have you ever thought about why protein in some cases help people lose weight, yet it helps people gain weight in other cases? Well, protein as a nutrient is more filling than processed carbohydrates and fat. So if you eat more protein, you can reduce hunger hormones like ghrelin, increase satiety hormones like peptide YY to help you feel fuller longer, reducing overall calorie intake when compared to eating fat or processed carbohydrates. This in turn helps you to reduce your cravings, especially for sugary snacks or eating late at night, which both contribute to weight gain. However, protein quality and carbohydrate quality are also super important. And if you don't focus on the quality of your protein, then any initial weight loss will just plateau. And the quality of your macronutrients isn't just limited to protein. Unlike what you hear on social media, not all carbohydrates are created equal either. So when you eat white bread, you're actually eating a dehydrated powder that has no germ. That's essentially pure sugar. Now, however, when you eat beans, you're actually eating a food that is both high in protein and high in fiber, which, by the way, is technically a carbohydrate. And if you eat whole foods that are rich in both fiber and protein, and that has been shown to be superior for weight loss and satiety compared to eating animal protein. So if you're stalled in your weight loss, you may want to try replacing some of your animal protein for foods high in fiber and protein, like beans. And when you do that, you achieve not just weight loss, but you actually increase longevity. Far too many people who center their diets based on animal meat initially lose weight, then they stall, and then they gain it right back. A major factor is because livestock is fatter and less nutritious to eat. Have you noticed that you need more sauce to flavor the meat these days? There's also less protein in the same volume of meat because they're just getting fatter. Beef and chicken has all those marbling now. And why is that? Well, most industrial livestock are fed grain-based diets, right? They're fed supplements too. And this isn't their normal diet. They're supposed to be foraging on grass. These diets are calorie dense to promote rapid fat gain to get them to market. And in addition, they restrict their exercise. They don't get to move because they're in such confined small spaces. It sounds like a recipe for rapid weight gain. So are you eating a grain-heavy diet and moving less too? Number 2 are azuki beans, which are excellent for obesity and diabetes prevention. These beans not only have the soluble fiber casing that increases metabolic health, but they also have phytonutrients like polyphenols that inhibit digestive enzymes. Why would you want to stop digestive enzymes? Well, if you slow them down, then it slows down the rate of you absorbing those calories, which keeps you fuller longer and lowers your insulin response. In fact, beans have been shown to continue to lower glucose and insulin levels the day after you eat the beans. Beans also activate your second immune system, your gut microbiome, that lives in your colon, because they contain fiber and resistant starches, which are prebiotics to keep your microbes healthy. All diseases begin in the gut. That's a direct quote from Hippocrates, the father of our modern medicine, who lived over 2,400 years ago. Now, did anyone listen to him? Apparently not really, because our modern lifestyles with pesticides and medicines, it continues to destroy our gut microbiome. However, it's never too late to repair your gut, as microbes are pretty resilient. Most people count protein, calories, and carbs or fats. However, the way to repair your gut is to count fiber. Elevating your daily fiber to 30 grams a day will significantly boost your gut immunity. Our nation has a dietary fiber GPA of F. We're barely making 15 grams a day. Less than 10% of us make the minimum. And when a cup of coffee counts as a gram of fiber, you can bet that the diet is fiber deficient. And that's why every opportunity I eat, I make sure that my foods are rich in fiber. Unfortunately, animal protein is fiberless and high in fat. The meats today are not the same meats your grandparents ate before the 1970s. Neither are the ingredients in your modern day bread. And that's why people in the old days could eat meat and bread and not be overweight, unlike people today. And what's the difference? You got it, chemicals. And it's not just pesticides. It's the chemical additives from colorings to preservatives that harm your metabolism and your gut microbiome, especially when you're eating it on repeat every day. This literally makes you eat more calories and slows down your ability to metabolize those calories. And when your metabolism suffers, you can no longer convert those calories into energy, but you simply store them as fat. Unfortunately, fat hides in places you don't see. That's why skinny people get diabetes. They're called TOFI, thin on the outside, fat inside. Ectopic fat behaves like a cancer to destroy the organ that it invades and your metabolism. So if the fat invades your muscles, then you get insulin resistant and marbleized muscles like Kobe beef. If the fat invades your liver, you get foie gras or fatty liver that ultimately will harden into cirrhosis. And do you know how many people are turning into Kobe beef or foie gras? You know, they actually have to force feed animals a lot of calories to do this. And when the animals stop eating, they stop getting all this marbleized fatty meats and liver. And our bodies function the same. When you change your diet, when you don't eat as much, you can reverse the foie gras and marbleized meats in you. There are several ways to achieve this, but the healthiest way to do so and not go hungry and lose muscle mass is to strategically look for high quality, high protein, high fiber foods. Another one is black beans, number 3, which has all the 20 amino acids to make all of your proteins. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But yep, every plant contains complete proteins. They may vary in ratio of their amino acids, but they have all of them, all the essential amino acids. And your body works the same way. Your amino acid requirements change depending on what part of the body is struggling to heal or needs repair. But marketing has convinced everybody protein is all we need. We have an obsession with protein, which is the largest, most complex macronutrient, and they serve as a structure or scaffolding for your entire body. Protein actually makes your bones, skins, organs, and immune systems, and are needed to digest your food as enzymes.
Hi friends, I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
And unfortunately, the human body lacks the ability to make all of our proteins, so there are 9 that's required for you to eat. And hence, we have to target foods with protein. And if you think of your body as a skyscraper that constantly needs maintenance, then when it doesn't get it, it can collapse. Recently, there was an earthquake in Myanmar that collapsed a high-rise building. There was not enough material to stabilize it. Anyone with a bone fracture? Why do some people fall and don't break their bones and others fall and they're not so lucky? Fracture occurs because there isn't enough material to withstand the stress. 50% of your bone volume is actually protein. And it's recommended that people eat 0.8 grams per kilogram per day of your lean body mass. Unless you're over 65, healing from surgery, pregnant, or lactating, then you may need 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram, because those folks need more protein. Here is the RDA for pregnant lactating women. Second and third trimester pregnancy requires 1.1 grams per kilogram. Lactation is more, 1.3 grams per kilogram. Now, here are some expert opinions that I pulled for what may be a safer target for those people with special circumstances. So if you're over 65, they recommend targeting 1 to 1.2 grams of kilogram. If you're post-surgery, you may need up to 2 grams per kilogram, and athletes may need 2 grams per kilogram as well. So you may wonder, why not just go overboard and eat only protein since it's so important? Well, eating excess protein is also bad because your body can't store protein as protein. It gets stored as fat, which increases fatty liver, foie gras, and marbleized meat, Kobe beef. Hence, it's important not to eat excess protein. And there are quite a few special properties about black beans that makes them a better quality food than many other popular protein sources. And this may be the opposite of what you have heard historically. Quality in the past was defined by the best protein sources that can make a baby rat grow, which thrives on cheese and other animal products. Well, we aren't rats, and they don't live very long. And beans, they're obviously not animal products, even though animals and people eat them and grow perfectly fine. And if you're into muscle building like a bodybuilder, then you know that it's essential to get an amino acid called leucine to grow muscle tissue. And did you know that 1 cup of dried black beans has more leucine than a cup of lean pork, cheese, chicken, turkey, or 3 ounces of lean sirloin steak with the fat trimmed off? Just like you shouldn't eat your meat raw, you shouldn't eat your beans uncooked. First of all, you can break your teeth. And second, you can actually get lectin poisoning, like some people in Japan who decided to sprinkle powdered, toasted, dry beans over their rice, trying to lose some weight after they watch a TV show. That didn't turn out so well. Foods with lectins, which is a group of proteins found essentially in all plants, have been villainized by some social media influencers with an incomplete understanding of lectins. Lectins are easily removed from any bean. If you pre-soak your beans overnight and then boil them for at least 15 minutes, you will destroy 98% of the remaining lectins. Now, just by soaking them, it removes most of the lectins as they are water soluble. 30 minutes of boiling will destroy all the lectins. And if you don't pre-soak it, then you need to boil your beans for a full hour. Slow cooking your beans will not destroy many lectins. But if you sprout your beans, those have less lectins. And your body can also deactivate some lectins. And if you've ever cooked beans, you know it takes at least 40 minutes of boiling to get it soft and edible. And that's why I use a pressure cooker. Lectin poisoning is not common, as most people already know beans need to be soaked and then cooked thoroughly. Who eats hard beans? It doesn't taste good. The soft kind is great, where it's soft enough where you can crush it on the roof of your mouth with your tongue. Now, as a busy working mom, I don't always have time to cook, so I sometimes will turn to canned beans. I just open it up and I rinse it before I use it. There's nothing wrong with canned beans. It's still pretty nutritious. But believe it or not all lectins are bad. And every animal, plant, and humans, we actually have our own lectins. We make lectins. Lectins are a class of very powerful proteins that serve as news reporters for your immune system. Lectins bind to the carbohydrates that are outside of your cells to change how your cells interact with each other. And your body will make lectins regardless of what you eat. We actually measure lectins to determine your blood type. Type A, type B, or type O. Have you ever heard of a transfusion reaction? It is at the minimum uncomfortable, and severe forms can be deadly. That is what the wrong lectin can do to your immune system. So when your body sees foreign lectins, you're not quite sure how they'll react. Lectins can actually activate your dormant immune cells. If you think about it, you can actually train your immune systems with lectins to recognize invaders like cancer. And that is what plant lectins do. They train your immune system. In fact, plant lectins are known to inhibit cancer cells, and research is exploding on lectins and cancer chemotherapy. And one day, your oncologist may be prescribing lectins as an immune modulator, similar to checkpoint inhibitors. But I'm not holding my breath for an expensive pharmaceutical when I can just go eat some beans and get my anti-cancer lectins now. Plants have a variety of cancer-suppressing phytonutrients. And the most popular plant protein in Asia is number 4. It's a soybean. My favorite way to eat soybean is to eat tofu. There's so many different versions of soy. You can get soy noodles, soy sheets, soy pudding, edamame beans, and you can even drink soy milk. And a lot of people, they refuse to eat soy because they think that it elevates your risk of cancer. I absolutely disagree. My ancestors have been eating soybeans and minimally processed soy products like tofu since the 11th century BC. And Americans, they didn't appreciate soybeans until Rutgers Agricultural College in 1879 studied this bean initially as a fertilizer. Again, one man's trash is another one's treasure. But World War II catapulted the soybean in American industries due to supply shortages. And finally, Americans recognized soybeans are useful, but instead of eating this whole soybean, they basically process it into edible oils and fats. And hence the beginning of the vegetable oil industry. Leave it to corporate greed to turn an absolutely healthy food into an absolutely unhealthy processed ingredient. And not every American fell for it. In the 1970s, William Shurtleff, a Stanford-trained engineer, tried to introduce soybeans and soy food to America with his research and publications like these books. And why was he so excited about soybeans? Simply put, soybeans are longevity foods. And you can eat it in so many different ways, just like longevity cultures. The soybean actually happens to be 35% protein, more than any other unprocessed plant or animal food. It also has a pretty good complete balance of all 20 amino acids. Half a cup of soybeans is equivalent to the protein found in 5 ounces of steak. And unlike meat, soybeans have no cholesterol and very little saturated fat. No harmful hormones like estrogens that are in your meat or antibiotics that can promote multi-drug resistant bacteria. Despite all the evidence that soybeans are an excellent protein source, there is a lot of controversy still about soy foods, just like there's a lot of controversy about estrogen replacement hormones. And did you know that Premarin, the original estrogen replacement, was isolated in 1942 from the urine of a pregnant horse? Hence the name Premarin. And all animals, whether male or female, have estrogen, including you. And your food has estrogen if you eat poultry, beef, pork, or if you're eating products made from mammals like dairy, milk, cheese. Soybeans don't have mammalian estrogen, but they do have phytoestrogens, which can interact with your estrogen receptors, however, very differently than mammalian estrogens. Mammalian estrogen hormones are 1,000 times more estrogenic and endocrine disrupting than chemicals found in your plastic water bottles. And if you're worried about collecting estrogen, then number 1, you got to poop often. The more you poop, the lower your blood estrogen. And number 2, don't collect excess. Avoid mammalian products with estrogen. Unfortunately, estrogen may be a big problem in the water supply. You know how it got there? Well, farm animals poop a lot of estrogen too. Remember, it's a mammalian hormone. The estrogen in their poop seeps into water sources and then pollutes your drinking water. And people who drink that polluted water, well, they have higher rates of breast and prostate cancer. I wonder which is worse, getting drug-resistant superbugs or breast and prostate cancer. Now, the soybean has concentrated unique phytoestrogens called isoflavones, specifically genistein and diazine, which are considered to be protective from mammalian estrogens. And this is because phytoestrogens have an anti-estrogenic effect, and different soy products have different amounts of isoflavones, as in this table. Now, even though both men and women make estrogen, women obviously have more estrogen, depending on their stage of life. Premenopausal women have higher estradiol from their ovaries, and when they eat plant phytoestrogens, those plant phytochemicals, they act more like anti-estrogens, protecting them from the negative effects of their own estrogen. Now, if you've hit perimenopause, then you no longer make estradiol, and you may have symptoms of estrogen withdrawal, such as hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness and thinning, breast tenderness, irregular or missed periods, maybe joint pains, and thinning hair. Contrary to popular belief, not every woman experiences all these symptoms. It's just like acne. Not every person has to have acne. And women who eat an Asian diet with soy have very limited, if any, perimenopausal symptoms. And sometimes men think that they're going to get man boobs from eating soy products. I've never met a man who had man boobs from eating soy products. I have, however, met a lot of men with man boobs because they are overweight, or they drink a lot of alcohol, or they are on certain medications. Having said that, it doesn't mean that it's healthy to overeat any food, including soybeans. And here's a list of the most common causes of gynecomastia, which are man boobs, that have nothing to do with soy. So why does mammalian estrogen cause breast cancer, but soy phytoestrogens have the opposite effect? Well, it turns out your body has two types of estrogen receptors, alpha and beta. Estrogen from humans and animals, mammalian estrogen, is more like a growth hormone and binds to alpha receptors, which causes tissue to grow, like breast tissue to grow. Beta receptors inhibit growth. So by stimulating beta receptors, which phytoestrogens like genistein in soy does, it stops breast cancer growth. However, it is true that phytoestrogens can also have a very weak alpha receptor trigger. But you have to megadose those soybeans and eat way more than 24 cups to come close to the potency and concentration of a mammalian estrogen like Premarin. Estrogen receptors, they do different actions in different organs. Activating alpha receptors in the liver releases clotting factors, and that's why hormone replacement can cause blood clots. Activating alpha receptors in the uterus promotes the uterus to grow, and that's why physicians don't prescribe estrogen alone, which increases the risk of breast and uterine cancer. And if you have an estrogen receptor positive cancer, you may be offered tamoxifen, which blocks the receptor to compete with estrogen to prevent the cancer from growing. And that's why I personally eat soy, because women who eat soy can reduce the risk of endometrial cancer by 30%. And as a bonus, it can dramatically reduce menopausal symptoms without the nasty side effects of medications. And remember, this isn't medical advice. So don't just start or stop any of your medications or your diet without consulting your own medical doctor. Another bonus in soy milk is in its prevention for bone health. This study showed an increased bone marrow density, especially in the lumbar spine. And building bone density, I can say, is really meaningless unless you can do something to reduce fractures. So that's why you got to exercise. That's also why osteoporosis drugs don't work as intended, as you can have a spontaneous fracture. Soy, on the other hand, has been shown to help reduce fractures, unlike dairy, which is actually associated with higher fracture rates. And countries who eat soy live over 10 years longer than the average person in America. But don't confuse traditionally minimally processed Asian soy products like tofu, soybean, edamame beans with soybean oil, soy protein isolates, or soy supplements. They are not the same. Those products exist because everybody wants convenience. So I have a convenient food high in protein that you can find at your local gas station. Peanuts. Number 5. My dad grew up during the World War II era, and he learned quickly peanuts helped him to feel full and was a good source of protein. It's also high in fiber. A cup of peanuts has 38.94 grams of fiber. And peanuts are very different from peanut butter. Many of the peanut butters in your local grocery supermarkets often have added sugar and fats. And of course, grinding any high-fat food into fine particles just increases your caloric intake of them, even if they have a lot of fiber. And when you eat whole nuts, you actually need to burn calories because you got to chew and grind that peanut into smooth as peanut butter to digest it. But when it's been processed outside, it becomes a highly caloric food with a lot of surface area so that your digestive enzymes can quickly metabolize it, therefore quickly make you gain weight. So it's much better to eat whole peanuts as opposed to a buttered nut if you're trying to lose weight. Because when you eat the whole nut, you're probably only absorbing 60% of the calories, since the fiber traps the rest of the calories, which eventually gets flushed out of your system in the toilet. Another convenient high protein food is number 6, pumpkin seeds, which has 35.21 grams of protein per cup. I usually sprinkle them in my salad or add them to my grains and beans. Pumpkins and pumpkin seeds in general are good sources of protein and fiber, which promotes weight loss by reducing blood sugars. As a bonus, pumpkin seeds can help maintain hair, as shown by this randomized trial on hair growth. Okay, so if you don't like peanuts or pumpkin seeds, how about number 7, almonds? A cup of almonds has 28.93 grams of protein, and it's the highest fiber nut. Did you know that almonds reduce skin wrinkling? People who eat lots of meat and processed foods simply look older because they have more skin wrinkles. Now, an easy to cook protein is number 8, lentils, which has 50 grams of protein in a cup of pre-cooked lentils. Now, lentils, unlike beans, can be ready in 15 minutes. There's no need to pre-soak lentils, but I usually will rinse it. And sometimes I cook it in veggie broth, maybe 3 cups of broth to 1 cup of lentils, and I add a couple of bay leaves and 2 tablespoons of equal parts turmeric, onion, and cumin powder. If it's too wet, just open the lid and let some of the water evaporate. If it's too dry, add some more water. You can season it more, or you can eat it like rice if you prefer, but make that whole grain rice. It's much better. You know, the highest protein source of natural foods, if you exclude chicken gizzard on the USDA list, is actually another bean. It's called pink beans, which has 44.02 grams of protein, which is only 0.05 grams below the chicken gizzard. Pink beans have a rich, meaty flavor, but they definitely need to be soaked and cooked like traditional black and azuki beans. Now, even though these are all great sources of protein, make sure you're not overeating food. First, I mentioned you can't store protein, and whatever you don't need for the day gets stored as fat. Protein also stimulates insulin release, hence a calorie surplus, whether that is carbs, fats, or protein, is a great way to gain weight. Now, I met someone at church who told me that they were on a ketogenic diet and eating predominantly chicken, and the person checked their ketones once in the AM to confirm ketosis. Now, I want to say that there is just no way that a predominantly protein-based diet is a ketogenic diet. The definition of a ketogenic diet means that you are eating a diet that is predominantly 70% or more of fat. And second, if you're doing a ketogenic diet, make sure you are in ketosis after you eat. And the only way to know that is to check your ketones after you eat. And if you eat a modern diet carbohydrate meal, you will be out of ketosis within a few hours. A high protein diet can reduce ketone levels because excess protein is converted to glucose through gluconeogenesis. However, if you recently made that dietary switch and was on a high processed food carbohydrate diet, you will notice that you will lose weight when you simply get off carbohydrates, no matter what else you are doing. But usually it's the other processed foods that come along with the high protein whole foods that make people gain weight the fastest. And before 1970s, most people were skinny despite eating meat and bread. Even highly processed Wonder White bread was sold since 1921. However, the original bread had a shorter list of ingredients, even though they were still not good for people. Some would argue it's a form of cake. Decades later, food scientists exploded, and the ingredients to manipulate texture, preservatives, and enrich bread with nutrients were added by the 1940s. So what changed in the 1970s to cause such a rapid growth of weight? The consumption of vegetable oils. In the 1950s, people consumed 12 pounds of vegetable oil per person per year. And by the 1970s, people were consuming 25 to 30 pounds of vegetable oils per person per year. The dietary food guidelines urge people to reduce saturated fat and reduce excess calories, reduce fat and sugar. So what did people do? They ate more food, especially in vegetable oil and refined carbohydrates. And when you combine high fat and high carbs, you simply will gain more weight. The body cannot metabolize both fat and sugar at the same time efficiently. And the presence of one shuts off the other. And hence, if you're trying to lose weight and you're struggling and you haven't decreased your fat intake or your carbohydrate intake, then that explains why you can't lose weight. And hence, this is why social media influencers have you focus on protein-rich foods. The problem is protein doesn't help you lose weight if you're still eating a ton of refined carbohydrates with fats. Now, in your health journey, the goal should be first and foremost to stick to real whole foods. And in nature, you're not going to find protein alone. It always comes with fat if you eat animals or sugar and fat if you eat plants. Digesting that protein and metabolizing it is actually really hard work for your body because protein is full of nitrogen. Now, do you know anything made out of nitrogen in your home? How about the air? There's nitrogen in your air. And every time you inhale, 70% of the gas you are inhaling is nitrogen. So why is TNT so explosive? Did you know it's made out of nitrogen? Well, unlike TNT, nitrogen gas in your air is very stable because it's held together by a triple bond. And when you eat protein, every single amino acid has a nitrogen or amino group, which is an NH2 group. NH2 is not stable, unlike the nitrogen in your air. So when you eat protein, the amino acids, they can't be stored in your liver. They have to break apart, and in the process, it releases ammonia, NH3. That's the same chemical that you use to clean windows. It's highly toxic. So your liver has to convert that to urea. And then urea acidifies your urine, which increases your risk of kidney stones. You have one liver. It is responsible to detoxify the pollution that you're breathing, the mercury and cadmium in your foods, ensuring that you have enough blood glucose, etc., etc. We all assume our liver can handle whatever toxins that we throw at its way. And it can until it cannot. 4.5 million Americans in the U.S. are diagnosed with liver disease every year. 42% of the adults in the U.S. have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, also known as metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease, which is directly related to the food that you are eating. Now, of course, this isn't medical advice, but if you're curious on whether or not you have fatty liver, then it requires blood work, imaging, and potentially a biopsy to confirm the diagnosis and assess its severity. Now, if you don't want ammonia, urea, this buildup of these toxins, then your protein source is super important. Branched chain amino acids have the highest amount of nitrogen. It also happens to increase your risk of diabetes and obesity. So hence swapping animal proteins, which have more branched chain amino acids, to plant proteins a few times a week, you can actually decrease that stress and increase your life expectancy. So this is why I eat number 10. Flax seeds, which is high in protein, high in fiber, high in omega-3 fats, which most Americans also struggle to eat enough of. Flax seeds are a great way to control weight because they have lots of soluble fiber that can block the absorption of other calories that aren't as good. So this means you have to eat flax seeds right before you eat your snacks or meals. Flax seeds can help you build up that fiber wall to buffer your metabolism from caloric surges. I can't overemphasize the need to get an adequate amount of omega-3 fats, which is even harder than getting fiber because there are less foods with a significant amount of omega-3 fats. And if you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.